Hi, I'm Tanya from Lovely Greens, and these 2 buckets beside me are nearly completely full of raw honey that we extracted a few days ago. I'm going to show you exactly the entire process of how we extract honey from the honeycomb these days, and it is much different to how I used to extract honey, and I would say much more in line with what the average hobby beekeeper would do to extract honey. And when I say hobby beekeeper, I mean people who keep up to 8 colonies of honeybees roundabouts. Beyond that amount, and it's a lot more work, and you might want to use something that's a bit more heavy duty and involves much more expensive equipment. But if you have less than that, you can extract and jar up your honey completely manually without any electricity, without any incredibly expensive equipment. And I'm going to show you exactly how we do it. This tower of boxes represents a year's worth of honey from my 2 colonies, Primrose and Bluebell. And there are 8 supers, so 8 boxes here. And within each box, there are 10 frames of honey. And this is a frame of honey here. Pretty well capped. And you can just see the golden honey just filtering through the sunlight there. My bees are pretty small. They're fairly conservative with their honey making, but I would say 2 to 3 jars of honey off of this, easy. And so when you take into consideration all of the frames in each one of these boxes, these supers of honey, we have quite the job on our hands. The setup is really basic. I just have a couple of colonies of bees, and so I don't need a complete room or industrial equipment to extract honey. Over here on the end, this is a manual extractor. And it has a handle here that turns. And if you look inside, we can put 4 frames of honey in there at a time, and it spins the honey out just through cranking this handle here. And then honey can filter down, and then it comes out of this tap here. Now, when honey comes out, it needs to be filtered. So we have a couple of filters here, one that's a medium mash and one which is a little bit finer. And then the honey goes into settling tanks after it's spun, and that's what these 2 buckets are. Now, how do we get honey out of the honeycomb? And what exactly is this white covering over the honeycomb? When bees make honey, they make it for long-term storage. They're basically creating their winter food source, and they create a lot of honey, way more than they actually need. So what they do is they process nectar and water together. They create honey, and when it is just right, when the water levels in the honey are low enough that it will store without fermenting, they'll cover up the cell that they've been creating it in, and that's what you see here. That is a beeswax coating. And so for us to be able to extract the honey, we're going to have to remove this coating of beeswax off the cells so we can get at it. And you'll see beekeepers use lots of different methods to remove it, but I keep things simple, and I use this. And this is an uncapping fork. So to remove this layer, all I'm doing is gently pulling at this top surface of beeswax. And this beeswax that I'm taking off right now, this beeswax capping bit, you can see that it's pretty clean stuff. It's quite white, and this makes really great beeswax for lip balms and salves and things like that. And that's pretty much it for this first step. So I'll carry on taking these cappings off of this first side, making sure that I open up every single cell, checking here on the side, make sure that those are all opened up. And then when I'm finished with this side, I'll flip the entire thing over, carry on the other side, and then once the frame is completely uncapped, it's ready to go in the extractor. Well, I think that will do. This is the 4th uncapped frame of honey, really sticky. Let's move it over and put it in the extractor with the other 3 that I've just done. Just slide it in there. And this is ready for extracting. And this is where having 2 people really comes in handy, because while I'm busy over there uncapping more honeycomb, Josh is going to take over and help with the spinning. What are you checking for right now?
Just see how much honey is on the outside. Most of that's gone.
So what happens now is this extractor really kind of flips honey out of one side better than the other. And so Josh is just going to flip them around so that the inside of the frames is now outside, and then we'll get more honey out of these if we do that extra little step. So on the lid goes, and another minute or 2 of spinning, and then it'll be done. Josh has been really busy spinning, I think, 3 sets of frames, so that's 12 frames, and we have enough honey in here to release out of this trap or tap and into the settling bucket under here. Now, I've taken a lot of the beeswax cappings off, but there's still going to be beeswax in there. There's still going to be some debris. And so it's important to catch it, which is why there are some sieves here, and also for the honey to settle in the bucket for at least a couple of days after today. And that gives time for any of that remaining debris that isn't caught by the screens here to float to the top of this bucket. And then that means that all the honey down at the bottom is really clean and can be bottled up. So what we need to do now is open this up, make sure this is underneath, and then open up this trap and then catch this honey. You can see here it's coming out, and there's a lot of beeswax still in here, little bits that need to be caught. It can take a long time for this honey to go through the screens because it is quite thick anyway, but the beeswax starts layering up. And so we'll have to keep an eye on this, close this trap up when this is full, and then scrape some of that beeswax out and put it into the bucket that I've been putting all the cappings in. And then that way I'll have some beeswax to process later, and we'll have clean honey down here in the bucket. We're at a point now where the honey has been settling in these buckets for a good few days. And what that means is that even though we've filtered it, even though we've done our best to keep it as clean as possible, there are lots of little tiny specks of beeswax and debris, and sometimes even propolis and pollen and just all kinds of hive gunk that might actually be in that honey. But by putting it into buckets like this, it gives it time for all of that debris to rise to the top, and it collects in kind of a thick, foamy mat at the top. But everything below it is pure raw honey, which means that were I to put a jar down here underneath this tap or honey gate, then it will fill up with pure raw honey. Just putting on some clean gloves for hygiene purposes, but if you are extracting honey just for you and your own family, you can just wash your hands. You don't have to wear gloves. But if you're selling it, try to keep it as clean as possible, including very clean jars. And I use standard 1 pound jars. I think this is about 300 milliliters. But when it's filled to the neck, just below the neck here, it is 1 pound of honey, which is what is sold in Britain as a standard amount. Now here comes the exciting part. I'm just going to open up this honey gate just a bit and start filling. And I've got a lot of jars to fill. Watch it come out. Look at that. Gorgeous raw honey. Just one thing that I wish that you took away from this video, it's that every single jar of raw honey that you get from a small scale beekeeper like myself is very labor intensive. It is a labor of love, actually, because this is not something that everyone wants to do or has the time to do, because you have to tend bees, you have to know what you're doing with them, you have to make sure that they're healthy, you have to harvest honey sustainably so that your bees survive the winter, so that you have honey and bees the next year. And then there's the entire process of extracting honey from the comb and putting it into jars for you and for us to enjoy. So it is an incredible thing when you think about the entire cycle of it. And it might actually make you really curious to know if you could keep bees and you want to know a little bit more about what goes into it. And if you do, I have a video that you can check out next. It's just here, and that will let you know a little bit more about what it takes to become a beekeeper. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions or comments, or if you are a beekeeper and you do things a little bit differently, leave me a comment down below. I'll see you next time here on Lovely Greens. Bye for now.